With what we've been seeing from the gaming industry and sort of its rise with production, costs, and development becoming bloated to where it takes an entire generation to create a game, the most recent release with Astro Bot is a very interesting contrast to the majority of the industry. And it's something that I do wonder Sony, kind of viewing all of this from start to finish with its development, now seeing the reception for it, is something that maybe they'll look at as maybe the model that you want to follow going forward. But there is still a big question around this game's release, and I want to talk about that here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here to the SpawnWave Plus channel. Now, over on Bloomberg, Jason Schreier did an entire write-up that is very interesting because it gives it some insight into Team Asobi, which is obviously the studio behind Astro Bot here. Has some remnants of Japan's studios, but for the most part, they've come together here and they've been creating Astro, which we saw with Astro's Playroom, of course, being a big one that has shipped with every PlayStation 5, meaning that Astro is at least in some way recognizable, since when you first turn your PS5 on, it's right there on your dashboard. So you've at least seen this character, which I think does at least give it a better chance to break out with a title like this in the mainstream. But Team Asobi had to deliver. And what's so interesting about this is, as really they dive into some of the intricacies around this, I mean, they had about 60 people who worked on this game. That was their team at Asobi, their overall development team. And it took about 3 years. Now, think about how often we talk about different games that take 6, 7, 8 years to develop, and a lot of that is them just trying to figure out the gameplay loop and then building it out from there for a wide mainstream audience. In this case, it seems that Asobi knew what they wanted to do with Astro Bot, as yes, they had already created Playroom. That if you've played Astro Bot and you've played Playroom, you know that Playroom sort of set the groundwork for Astro Bot. This is essentially the big, I would say built-out 3D platformer that we wanted to see after Playroom, which is an awesome title, but it is somewhat limited in scope. For example, in this case, I mean, Astro Bot is reportedly, they say 12 to 15 hours, which that would be going for the 100% platinum run. As I'm playing through it now, I am starting to see, okay, I have more than half the bots now, and it's taken like, what, 4 or 5 hours or something like that. So this is something that will eventually, I would say, run its course by that 12-hour mark, most likely. Then you go through and clean everything up to get that platinum trophy. But I actually find that as a positive thing because, so for example, I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I like the game, but I also looked at my playtime and saw that it was approaching 100 hours, and there still felt like there was a lot of stuff to do. But there were stretches, hours even, where I felt like I really wasn't getting anything done, and it was there just for the sake of extending that playtime for some arbitrary number. I really don't mind if games want to be more condensed and have you just experience the entire thing that they have laid out in less time, if that means you have just a more streamlined experience where it doesn't do that video game trope of, oh yeah, you have to walk across this bridge, but naturally something has to happen to make that now a 2-hour experience rather than just, hey, walk across this bridge for a few minutes. And with Astro Bot now out, reviews are in, I would say Team Asobi has held up their end of the bargain here with a 94 on Metacritic. This being one of the best rated 3D platformers of all time. To me, the question becomes, will this sell? Will they be able to generate revenue here? So the thing with this is, technically, because I mean, I'm looking at 60 people, 3 years in Japan, the cost around this game is not high. Like, I think if they sold Ratchet and Clank numbers, so a few million copies, Sony would look at that and be like, okay, that's profitable. Great. We're not losing money on this project. And think about what just happened for Sony with Concord. Yeah, they're losing quite a bit of money on that one. I think it's safe to say there, because now with Concord having released, they technically can't write it off and at least save some money on, say, taxes or something. They can't do that now. So they have a whole thing going on over there, whereas it feels like Astro Bot, just in general, has been a very streamlined experience behind the scenes for development, although we hear that just development in general is insanity, and then it just all comes together at the end. But like, if you play the game, It's super high quality. It's not breaking. Like there's no real glitches or bugs or issues that I'm coming across right now. And it feels really well put together across the board. So with all of that said and the cost being lower, I mean, I think Astro Bot is set up for success. And it does make me wonder if Sony looks at this and goes, oh, maybe not every game we do with this kind of quality in mind has to be that quadruple A $300 million project that has to lean into the idea of this dark and brooding, over-the-shoulder, narrative-driven experience. There's not even, like, dialogue in Astro Bot. It is able to tell what is a very simple story through just actions, words, and obviously them just showing you different things that you're doing in the game, but it's able to convey that along with the gameplay and the sort of the loop that they've set up here so that you figure things out on your own, and you figure things out quickly. When I did my initial gameplay for it, I realized for about 3 minutes, I was playing the game. It wasn't some situation of, oh, if you're going to sit down and start playing this, you might want to go ahead and set up 2 hours of time, that kind of a block, so you get through the initial cutscenes and them setting up the story where you're walking slowly next to someone and they're giving you the rundown on what's happening. You understand what I'm saying there. This was very quick and very straightforward. So I kind of wonder, let's say this sells well, if Sony looks and goes, oh, maybe it would make sense to do a 12 to 15 hour Sly Cooper. Sure, that might be me going, okay, that'd be really cool to see this old IP get revived, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, oh, maybe we don't have to continue to double down on these open world narrative-driven experiences like a Horizon, which I do like the franchise, but I kind of wonder if Sony is kind of beating that franchise into the ground a bit, whereas you can create something for less money that is more focused, like Astro Bot. You can get those review scores that they want because they want that PlayStation Studios logo to be next to things that are highly touted, and this is at a 94. I would say they're pretty satisfied with that. But really at this time, I think go back and start looking at some of your old intellectual properties because they can still work as we're seeing here. At its core, Astro Bot doesn't really... It's interesting, it's fun, they do some unique things, but people compare it to things like Mario Galaxy or Mario 3D World or some of these Nintendo 3D platformers because it's not like breaking the mold necessarily, but it is doing all of the things right that you would want from it, and it's super high quality, and at the end of the day, that's kind of all you really need to do. Make a good game, and people hopefully will show up for it. And that's what we're going to be keeping an eye on here going forward, because if the message is sent to Sony, I mean, I think we could see what people would refer to as old school Sony, I guess, making a return. And I'm thinking from that late PS2, sort of first half of PS3 days where they tried all kinds of weird and wacky things, and Japan Studios was putting out stuff all over the place. Unfortunately, it wasn't selling then, but maybe Team Asobi has it figured out here with Astro Bot, and we'll find out with some of the sales charts and stuff coming up, unless Sony is really happy with what they sell and they're ready to just make an announcement themselves during the week. But let me know what you guys think about all this down below. If you've played Astro Bot, would you like to see Sony maybe continue on in that direction? Especially instead of like the live service initiative, would you like to see them maybe make the shorter, higher quality game initiative and go back for some of their older IPs? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.